Have you ever stood before an ancient monument and felt, deep in your bones, that it was trying to tell you something, a secret locked just beyond your understanding? There's a certain kind of magic in gazing upon the work of hands that shaped stone thousands of years ago, a humbling sense that the past isn't really past at all, but whispering, waiting for us to listen. Few places on Earth capture this feeling more powerfully than the high plains of Bolivia, where a massive stone portal known as the Gate of the Sun rises against the sky, carved with symbols so intricate and mysterious they've puzzled historians, archaeologists, and dreamers for generations. This isn't just a relic, it's a question etched in rock, an invitation to step into the world of the Tiwanaku, a civilization that mastered this harsh landscape, built an empire, and then vanished, leaving behind this stunning gateway as one of their most compelling legacies. The Gate of the Sun stands as the centerpiece of a culture whose influence once stretched across the Andes, a society of innovators and visionaries who flourished long before the Inca rose to power. Yet for all their achievements, much about the Tiwanaku remains shrouded in mystery. Who were these people? What did they believe? And why did they invest such incredible effort into creating this single, magnificent structure, covered from top to bottom in detailed carvings that seem to tell a story no one today can fully decipher? Each symbol, each figure staring out from the stone, feels like a piece of a grand cosmic puzzle, one that hints at advanced knowledge of astronomy, profound spiritual beliefs, and a world completely unlike our own. That's the journey we're beginning today, a deep dive into one of South America's greatest historical enigmas. We'll explore the culture that created this marvel, unravel the theories behind its stunning iconography, and venture into the heart of what makes the Gate of the Sun so much more than just an archaeological site. It's a gateway in every sense, not just through space, but through time, imagination, and human curiosity. By the end of this video, you won't just see a stone slab, you'll feel the weight of its mystery, the pull of its story, and maybe even catch a whisper of the secret it's been keeping all these centuries. So let's step through together. For much of the modern world, the Gate of the Sun remained a secret held by the wind and the local Aymara people until the middle of the 19th century. It was then that American explorer and diplomat Ephraim George Squier arrived in the region. A man deeply curious about the prehistoric cultures of the Americas, Squier was one of the first Westerners to meticulously document the immense ruins of Tiwanaku, and his sketches and descriptions introduced the gateway to a global audience. Imagine his awe standing before this colossal, solitary archway on the high-altitude plain, its surface an intricate tapestry of carved figures utterly unlike any art or writing system known to Europe. He was looking at a complete enigma, a puzzle with no key, and his writings capture that profound sense of mystery. But with no framework to understand it, the vacuum of knowledge was quickly filled with speculation, and much of it said more about the era's prejudices than the gate's true history. In the absence of facts, imagination, and often a colonialist mindset ran wild. Some of the earliest theories proposed by European scholars were rooted in the now debunked concept of diffusionism, the idea that complex civilizations could not have arisen independently in the Americas. They argued that such a sophisticated structure must have been the work of a lost, superior race, often imagined as fair-skinned or Mediterranean, who had traveled across the ocean to impart their knowledge. This was not just a casual guess, it was a deliberate and sadly common effort to strip indigenous cultures of their own monumental achievements, to recast native peoples as incapable of such genius on their own terms. The gate in these flawed narratives became a relic of foreigners, its true builders erased from their own story. As the 20th century dawned and fascination with the unknown grew, the theories became even more fantastical. The gateway's precise carving, its imposing size, and its remote location made it a perfect canvas for the emerging genre of ancient astronaut speculation. Authors like Erich von Däniken would later popularize the idea that such structures were proof of extraterrestrial contact, suggesting the gate was a literal stargate or a landing pad for alien visitors. While these ideas captured public imagination, they created a different kind of erasure, replacing the racist lost white race myth with a sci-fi narrative that still denied the Tiwanaku people their rightful credit. It framed their incredible work as something not just beyond understanding, but beyond human capability altogether. These decades of wild speculation, while entertaining, created a thick fog of misconception that serious archaeologists and historians have spent generations painstakingly clearing away. They weren't just harmless stories, they actively obscured the real and far more fascinating mystery. The true wonder isn't that aliens might have built it, but that humans did. A thriving, complex society that adapted to a punishing environment, organized massive labor projects, and developed a rich spiritual worldview, all of which is encoded in that stone. The shift from seeking outside inventors to understanding the indigenous creators is the most important step in truly appreciating the gate of the sun. It moves us from fantasy into a much more compelling reality, one where the answers lie not in the stars, but in the dirt, the stone, and the intricate symbolism waiting to be decoded by those willing to listen. To truly appreciate the gate, we must first meet the people who raised it from the earth, a civilization that thrived in what many would consider an impossible place. The Tiwanaku state emerged around the shores of Lake Titicaca, a breathtaking body of water straddling the modern border of Bolivia and Peru, situated at a lung-crushing altitude of over 12,000 feet above sea level. This was not an easy landscape to conquer. The air is thin, the nights are freezing, and the soil is challenging. Yet between the years 500 and 1000 AD, the Tiwanaku didn't just survive here. They built a flourishing empire that became the spiritual and political heart of the Central Andes for centuries. Their capital city, also named Tiwanaku, was a marvel of urban planning and ceremonial grandeur, a powerful draw for pilgrims and a testament to human ingenuity. At its peak, the city was a sprawling metropolis of grand plazas, imposing stepped pyramids and intricate temples, all constructed with a precision that still astounds engineers today. The Tiwanaku were master architects and stonemasons. They moved gigantic blocks of sandstone and andesite, some weighing over 100 tons, across vast distances without the wheel, without draft animals, and without iron tools. How did they achieve this? The exact methods remain part of their lost knowledge, but it likely involved an immense coordinated labor force, sophisticated rope systems, and a deep understanding of leverage and physics. Their signature architectural style involved cutting stones with such exacting precision that they fit together perfectly without any mortar, interlocking like a colossal three-dimensional puzzle. This wasn't just for show. This technique, known as ashlar masonry, made their structures incredibly resilient to the earthquakes that frequently shake the high Andes. This city was far more than a collection of impressive buildings. It was a potent theocracy, a place where spiritual and political power were one and the same. The ruling elite were likely seen as intermediaries between the people and their gods, and the entire urban layout was designed to reinforce this sacred authority. Grand ceremonies would have unfolded in the vast sunken courtyards and atop the massive platforms, with priests orchestrating rituals that connected the community to the cycles of the sun, moon, and rain. The city was a cosmic engine, an axis mundi where the human world touched the divine, and at the heart of this sacred landscape stood the Kalasasaya, a massive rectangular temple complex defined by towering stone monoliths. It was on this platform, facing the eastern sunrise, that the Gate of the Sun was originally placed, not as a solitary monument but as the central, focal point of this immense ceremonial stage. The gate's location tells us everything about its importance. It wasn't a city gate or a boundary marker, it was almost certainly a portal to the sacred. Scholars believe it formed part of a much larger structure, perhaps the entrance to a special temple or shrine within the Kalasasaya complex. To pass through it would have been a profound spiritual act, a transition from the mundane world into a space charged with divine power. In this context, the intricate carvings covering its surface weren't mere decoration. They were a visual liturgy, a complex theological text in stone meant to be read and understood by the initiated. The figures depicted are now believed to represent a pantheon of deities, central to a belief system that revolved around agriculture, fertility, and the orderly passage of time, concerns vital to survival in such a demanding environment. The Tiwanaku built this gateway not for invaders or traders, but for their gods, creating a permanent stone embodiment of their worldview for all time. So let's focus on the object itself to truly appreciate the physical reality of what we're dealing with. The Gate of the Sun is a single, monumental slab of andesite granite. Not assembled from pieces, but hewn from one enormous block. Today, it stands about 9 feet tall and nearly 13 feet wide, and while it's fractured now, a large crack runs down from the top. Its original form would have been absolutely commanding. And its weight, current estimates put it at over 10 tons. That's the equivalent of 2 full-grown male African elephants. Just let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't a small project, it was a titanic undertaking. The journey of this stone began miles away at a quarry near the Lake Titicaca shore. Andesite is an incredibly hard, dense volcanic rock, far more difficult to work with than softer sandstone. The Tiwanaku stonemasons would have had to identify a suitable block of this material in the quarry face, a process requiring an expert eye. Then the real work began. Without iron chisels or power tools, how do you even begin to separate a 10-ton block from a solid rock wall? The prevailing theory is that they used a technique called thermal shock. They would have built small fires directly against the rock face to heat it up, and then rapidly cooled the heated surface with water. This sudden temperature change causes the rock to expand and contract violently, creating microfractures and weakening it enough for stone or bronze tools to pry the block loose. It was a slow, painstaking, and incredibly dangerous process, repeated over and over until the monolith was finally free. But then comes the next, arguably greater challenge: moving it. The quarry site was across the water from the city of Tiwanaku, so this 10-ton behemoth had to travel nearly 100 kilometers, partly over land and partly across the deep, cold waters of Lake Titicaca. The logistics are mind-boggling. Most archaeologists believe the land portion of the journey was accomplished using a combination of log rollers, rope made from tough indigenous grasses, and the sheer brute force of a large team of workers. Imagine the coordination required: teams pulling on ropes, others constantly repositioning the rollers from the back to the front, all while moving an almost unimaginably heavy load across uneven, altiplano terrain. The lake crossing presents an even more fascinating puzzle. The Tiwanaku were master boat builders, constructing large vessels from totora reeds that grew abundantly along the lake shore. These reed boats, some of which could be enormous, were likely capable of supporting such a heavy load for a water-based transport. They might have rolled the stone onto a giant, specially built raft, and then carefully poled or sailed it across the lake. The mental image is astounding: a fleet of reed boats escorting a floating mountain of stone, a procession of human effort moving a piece of the earth itself to be reborn as a sacred object. Finally, at the building site, the most delicate phase began: the carving. Using only stone hammers and simple bronze tools, alloys that were much softer than modern steel, artisans had to transform this rough, gigantic block into a perfectly smooth surface covered in intricate, deep, and symmetrical reliefs. This would have taken not just months, but likely years. They might have used sand mixed with water as a primitive abrasive to slowly grind and polish the surface. Every figure, every line on the central deity and the surrounding winged attendants had to be planned and executed with flawless precision. A single significant mistake with a bronze chisel on an andesite block could have meant starting over with a new 10-ton piece of stone. The pressure, the skill, and the patience required are simply beyond our modern comprehension. This gate stands as a permanent testament to a civilization that possessed not just immense physical strength, but profound artistic vision and technological genius. And there, at the very heart of this immense stone canvas, is the figure that commands your entire attention, the central deity often called the staff god. He looms over the entire composition, a being of immense power and profound emotion. His face is stern, framed by a magnificent headdress that radiates outward like the rays of the sun or the plumage of some majestic, otherworldly bird. In each hand, he grips two formidable staffs or scepters, which are themselves intricately carved with condor heads and what appear to be symbols of growing plants. But it's his eyes that truly captivate you, or more specifically, what streams from them. Two single, unmistakable tears, carved to run down his cheeks in a permanent display of divine sorrow or overwhelming compassion. So who is this weeping god staring out from the stone? For a long time, many scholars simply called him Viracocha, the great creator deity of the later Inca pantheon. The Inca themselves, when they encountered the ruins of Tiwanaku centuries after its collapse, believed it to be the work of their own creator god, and so the name stuck. But this is likely a case of later cultures projecting their own beliefs onto an older, far more mysterious civilization. The Tiwanaku staff god is almost certainly a distinct figure, a central pillar of their own unique cosmology that may have influenced later Andean religions but was not identical to them. He is a Tiwanaku original. The objects he holds are the first major clue to his identity. Those aren't weapons, they are staffs, instruments of authority and power. But a closer look reveals they are also much more. The staffs are topped with condor heads, linking this deity directly to the upper world, the realm of the sky and the sun. And running down the length of each staff are repeating motifs that many interpret as stylized plants, perhaps maize or other vital crops. This suggests a god who doesn't just rule, but who nurtures and provides. He holds the power of life itself, the authority to make things grow. He is a celestial farmer, a divine administrator of the natural world. This connects directly to the tears. Why would a being of such immense power be weeping? One compelling interpretation is that these are not tears of sadness, but of life-giving rain. In the high-altitude world of the Tiwanaku, where drought could mean starvation and collapse, rain was the most precious gift the gods could bestow. The staff god, then, might be literally crying the water that sustains the world, his divine emotion physically manifesting as the blessing of precipitation. His tears water the symbolic plants on his staffs, completing a powerful cycle of creation and sustenance. He is a god who feels the needs of his people so deeply that his compassion literally flows from him, nourishing the land. Another fascinating theory posits that this central figure might not be a purely mythological god at all, but a representation of a powerful ruler or a deified ancestor. In many ancient cultures, the line between a supremely powerful king and a god was very thin. The elaborate headdress could be a crown, the staffs could be scepters of office, and the tears could symbolize the ruler's burden, the weight and sorrow of leadership. He could be a founding figure, a cultural hero who brought knowledge of agriculture and social order to the people, forever immortalized in stone as the ultimate source of their authority and wisdom. Whether a full deity or a deified king, his image served a powerful political purpose, visually reinforcing the divine right of the Tiwanaku elite to rule. To stand in the Kalasasaya courtyard and look up at this immense, weeping, powerful figure was to understand your place in a universe governed by a strict, sacred hierarchy. He is the ultimate source of all power, both celestial and earthly, and his enduring image on the gate reminds us that for the Tiwanaku, the spiritual and the political were one and the same. But to truly grasp the power of this central figure, we must look upward to the most dazzling and complex part of his image, the magnificent headdress. It's not merely a crown, it's an explosion of symbolism, a halo of 24 distinct rays that fan out around his head, each one terminating not in a simple point, but in a meticulously carved human or animal face. This is far more than decoration. It's a dense, layered codex of Tiwanaku belief, and cracking its meaning has led researchers down several fascinating and not necessarily mutually exclusive paths. The most immediate and compelling interpretation connects this radiant headdress directly to the sun. The number 24 is profoundly significant here. It could be a direct representation of the 24 hours in a day, suggesting the deity's dominion over the entire daily cycle, from dawn to dusk and through the night. But many scholars see an even deeper astronomical connection. They propose that these 24 rays don't just represent hours, but a much grander cosmic cycle, a solar calendar. The theory suggests that the heads could symbolize the 24 fortnights or half-months that make up a full solar year, positioning the staff god not just as a weather deity, but as the ultimate master of time itself. In this reading, his head isn't just crowned by the sun, it is the sun, and the rays are a visual map of the year's journey, a perpetual, stone-carved almanac ensuring the orderly progression of seasons so critical for planting and harvest. Yet the presence of those small, distinct faces at the end of each ray complicates a purely solar interpretation. Why would a calendar need to feature faces? This is where the symbol transforms from a timekeeping device into a profound statement of political and spiritual power. Each of those heads, some human, some perhaps depicting revered animals like the puma or condor, could represent a subjugated people, a conquered territory, or a tributary state that was part of the expanding Tiwanaku Empire. The headdress in this light becomes a symbolic registry of dominion. It visually proclaims that all these different groups are unified under the radiating authority of this single central god, and by extension, his earthly representatives, the Tiwanaku elite. He doesn't just rule the sun, he rules everyone the sun touches. It's a declaration of absolute total power, both celestial and terrestrial. Perhaps the most encompassing theory is that the headdress is a comprehensive cosmological diagram, a snapshot of the entire Tiwanaku universe. The central figure is the axis mundi, the fixed point around which all of existence revolves. The rays emanating from him could depict the layers of reality, the upper world of the sky and stars, the middle world of the earth and humanity, and the lower world of the ancestors and origins. The different faces would then represent the various spirits, deities, or forces that inhabit each of these tiers. This idea finds powerful support in other Tiwanaku artifacts. On brilliantly woven textiles and finely painted pottery, we see the exact same motif repeated, a central figure, often with a streaming, rayed headdress, surrounded by a retinue of smaller, attendant beings. This wasn't a one-off design on the gate, it was a core, repeating element of their sacred art. It was their way of depicting the structure of the cosmos, with a powerful creator at the center and all other life forms arranged in a precise hierarchical order around him. So, is it a calendar, a crown, or a cosmos? The most honest answer is that it is likely all three at once. For the Tiwanaku, these concepts were probably not separate. The sun's movement was the calendar which governed the agricultural cycle, which was the source of the state's power and wealth, which was seen as a divine mandate from the gods who structured the universe. The headdress brilliantly fuses science, politics, and religion into a single, unforgettable image. It tells us that the Tiwanaku viewed their world as an interconnected whole, where understanding the stars was essential for ruling people, and where a ruler's authority was as natural and cyclical as the sun rising in the east. The gate's central figure, with his flowing tiers and radiant multi-faced crown, is the ultimate expression of this worldview, a god who measures time, commands the heavens, and weeps the very rain that gives life to his empire. And then there are the tears, two perfectly carved streams running from the eyes of this formidable being, a detail so human, so emotionally raw, that it feels completely arresting amidst the rigid formality of the other symbols. In our artistic tradition known for its geometric precision and symbolic power, this display of apparent emotion is almost unique. It strikes a chord deep within us, transcending the millennia that separate our world from his. We instinctively want to know why. Why is this powerful God, this master of the cosmos, weeping? The most pervasive and compelling theory is that these are not tears of sorrow at all, but tears of creation. In the harsh, high-altitude environment of the Altiplano, where the Tiwanaku built their empire, water was literally synonymous with life. Rain wasn't just a weather event, it was a divine blessing, the difference between a bountiful harvest and catastrophic famine. In this context, the tears streaming down the deity's face could be a direct representation of life-giving rain. He isn't crying from sadness, he is quite literally weeping the water that nourishes the crops depicted on his staffs, that fills Lake Titicaca, and that sustains his people. His compassion for his creation is so immense that it physically manifests as the most precious resource in the world. This transforms the figure from a distant, stern ruler into a nurturing, empathetic provider, a god who feels the needs of his people and responds directly to them. This interpretation elegantly ties the entire iconography together. The celestial headdress represents the sun that grows the crops, and the tears represent the rain that waters them. He is the complete cycle of agricultural life, deified. Yet, that profound sense of emotion the carving evokes leads to another, darker possibility. What if the tears are exactly what they appear to be, an expression of divine grief? Some scholars have pondered whether this could be a lament for a fallen world, a recognition of human suffering, or perhaps a mourning for a lost golden age. Many creation myths around the world include a theme of a primordial paradise that was somehow lost or corrupted, requiring gods to intervene or reset the natural order. The Tiwanaku, for all their achievements, were not immune to disaster. Their civilization eventually collapsed, likely due to a prolonged and severe drought that would have made their sophisticated agricultural systems fail. Could the gate's central figure be a representation of a god who foresees this end? Or perhaps a deity who wept for the inevitable hardships of human existence? This reading adds a layer of profound tragedy and philosophical depth to the monument, suggesting the Tiwanaku world you encompassed not just power and order, but also an acute awareness of suffering and the fragile, cyclical nature of life itself. A third and more recent theory ventures away from emotion and into the realm of pure astronomy. Could those streaking lines represent something else entirely? Some researchers have pointed out that the carving style of the tears' long, slightly curved lines emanating from a central point bears a striking resemblance to how comets are depicted in the art of other ancient cultures. In the pristine, unpolluted night sky over the Andes, a bright comet would have been a breathtaking and potentially terrifying sight. If a particularly brilliant comet appeared during a critical time in Tiwanaku history, it could have been interpreted as a divine message, a portent of great change, or even a celestial manifestation of the god himself. This doesn't necessarily negate the other interpretations. In a culture that saw the celestial and the earthly as deeply intertwined, a comet could easily be seen as both a physical astronomical event and a spiritual tear from the sky god, a sign of his powerful and turbulent presence. What makes this single detail so captivating is that all these theories can coexist. The Tiwanaku worldview was likely not one of either or, but of both and. A tear could be a drop of rain and a symbol of compassion. A celestial event could be a physical comet and a spiritual sign. This multifaceted understanding is what separates modern analysis from the older, simplistic speculation about aliens or lost races. We are now learning to appreciate the Tiwanaku on their own terms as sophisticated thinkers who encoded complex, layered meanings into their art. The tears on the staff god's face are a perfect example of this, a simple human detail that opens a window into an entire belief system, where the divine was intimately connected to the natural world, where power was tempered with empathy, and where the universe was a deeply interconnected story written in stone, stars, and falling water. Flanking the central staff god in 3 meticulously ordered rows are 48 smaller figures, each one captured in a state of perpetual motion, seemingly running in unison toward the central deity. They are often called the winged attendants or flying figures, and they present a mystery just as compelling as the god they surround. At first glance, they appear almost identical, a uniform procession of worshippers. But upon closer inspection, subtle differences emerge in their headdresses and the small objects they sometimes carry, hinting at a far more complex story than mere decoration. These aren't just a background chorus, they are a critical part of the gate's narrative, and deciphering their role is key to unlocking the entire monument's purpose. One of the most enduring interpretations is that these 48 figures represent a celestial court, a hierarchy of spiritual messengers or lesser deities attending their king. The feathered backs or wings attached to each figure strongly suggest a connection to the sky, the realm of birds and celestial travel. In Andean cosmology, birds like the condor were seen as messengers that could travel between the world of humans and the world of the gods. These attendants, then, could be the staff god's divine bureaucracy, intermediaries responsible for carrying out his will across the cosmos, delivering his blessings of rain and fertility to the earth below. Their kneeling posture and direction of movement signify submission and service, a celestial army awaiting its orders from the ultimate commander. A second, deeply human theory posits that these figures are not gods at all, but deified ancestors or powerful priests. Many ancient cultures practiced ancestor veneration, believing that powerful figures from the past continued to influence the world of the living. The rows of nearly identical figures could represent a lineage of revered kings or founding shamans, now immortalized in stone, forever paying homage to the primary god they served in life. Their varied headdresses might denote different family lines, ranks, or specific roles within the Tiwanaku priesthood. In this reading, the gate becomes a powerful political and spiritual document, visually reinforcing the authority of the ruling class by showing their eternal, divine connection to the central source of all power. It tells the people that their leaders are literally carved into the fabric of the universe, right beside God himself. Perhaps the most captivating and mathematically precise theory is that this procession is a sophisticated astronomical chart. The number 48 is highly specific and appears in other ancient calendars. Some researchers, like Professor and astronomer Giulio Magli, have proposed that these figures are not arbitrary but could represent a count of something celestial. One compelling idea is that they map the 48 rising and setting positions of the Pleiades star cluster over a single solar year. For the Tiwanaku, as for many agricultural societies, the Pleiades were critically important. Their first appearance in the dawn sky marked the beginning of the planting season. Their movement and brightness were even believed to predict the coming rains. To encode this vital astronomical knowledge into the gate would transform it from a static religious icon into a dynamic, functional calendar, a stone observatory designed to ensure the empire's agricultural survival. Another astronomical interpretation suggests the figures could represent a count of the 24 half-months in a year for both the day sky and the night sky, doubling to 48 to encompass the full cycle of day and night. Or they might correlate to the movement of other planets significant to Tiwanaku sky watchers. The key to this theory lies in their motion. They are all running. This could be a brilliant artistic metaphor for the perpetual, cyclical, running or movement of the stars and planets across the heavens. The gate, in this light, becomes a frozen snapshot of the celestial dance, with the central staff god as the fixed sun around which all other heavenly bodies revolve. The truth likely lies in a masterful synthesis of all these ideas. For the Tiwanaku, the celestial and the spiritual were not separate categories. A star was also a spirit, an ancestor could become a star. The 48 figures can simultaneously be understood as deified ancestors and celestial bodies and divine messengers. Their running motion is both a literal representation of planetary movement and a metaphor for their role as active conduits between the divine and the earthly. This layered understanding reflects a world where science, religion, and politics were completely intertwined. The gate of the sun, therefore, is not just a picture of their gods. It is a comprehensive model of their entire universe, a universe governed by a weeping, compassionate creator, administered by a celestial court of star ancestors, and kept in motion by the eternal, running dance of the heavens. This intricate procession of figures, forever running in lockstep toward their god, may hold the key to one of the gate's most practical and brilliant functions. Beyond their spiritual symbolism, these 48 attendants could represent a sophisticated and precise calendar system, a stone-carved almanac that allowed the Tiwanaku to master time itself. For an agricultural society living at the mercy of the seasons, this wasn't abstract knowledge, it was the bedrock of survival, the difference between a thriving empire and widespread famine. The ability to accurately predict the coming rains, the optimal planting times, and the right moments for sacred festivals was a form of power as real as any army. Some researchers have focused on the number 48 itself, finding it too specific to be coincidental. One compelling theory suggests these figures could map a lunar calendar. A standard lunar year, based on the cycles of the moon, is about 354 days. However, some ancient American cultures used a 290-day count for certain ritual or agricultural cycles, often divided into smaller, repeating units. If each of the 48 figures represented a specific number of days, their total could align perfectly with such a cycle. Imagine a priest or astronomer using the gate as a reference, moving a counter from one figure to the next with each passing day, creating a public, immutable record of the year's progression that everyone could see and understand. An even more complex proposal involves a synodic calendar which tracks the relationship between multiple celestial bodies. The most famous of these is the Venus synodic period, the 584 days it takes for Venus to complete its cycle of appearing as a morning star and then an evening star. This cycle was sacred to cultures like the Maya, and there's strong evidence the Tiwanaku also held Venus in high esteem. Intriguingly, 584 divided by the number of figures doesn't yield a whole number, but another important period does, the lunar synodic month, the 29.5 days between full moon. 48 multiplied by 29.5 is 1,416, which is incredibly close to the length of a 4-year lunar cycle. This kind of long count calendar would have been essential for correcting the drift between lunar and solar years, ensuring that seasonal festivals stayed aligned with the actual seasons over long periods. The gate, then, might not be a simple day counter, but a complex astronomical computer rendered in stone. It could have served as a mnemonic device for priest astronomers to calculate these longer, more intricate cycles. The varied headdresses of the figures might not denote different people, but different periods or significant astronomical events. One headdress could mark a point where a solar observation was needed to reset the lunar count, while another could signal the anticipated heliacal rising of a star like the Pleiades. This transforms the gate from a passive monument into an active tool, the centerpiece of a living scientific tradition. The act of reading the gate would have been a sacred ritual, a merging of celestial observation, mathematical calculation, and spiritual devotion that allowed the Tiwanaku to impose order on the chaotic flow of time, guaranteeing that their society remained in harmony with the cosmos they so deeply revered. But our journey around the gate isn't complete without descending from the celestial dance above to confront the powerful, protective, and fearsome figures that anchor the entire monument at its base, the Chachapumas. Carved into the massive stone pillars that support the archway itself, these are not benevolent attendants or weeping creators. The Chachapuma is a composite creature, a stunning fusion of human and jaguar, often depicted in a crouching, aggressive posture, and most strikingly, frequently shown clutching a severed human head. This is a visceral, shocking image, one that pulls us abruptly from the cosmic order above into a much darker, more primal aspect of Tiwanaku belief, the undeniable power of sacrifice, death, and the underworld. To understand the Chachapuma, we must first understand the jaguar itself in the Andean worldview. Across ancient South American cultures, the jaguar was the ultimate symbol of untamed power, the undisputed lord of the dark jungle and the spiritual underworld. It represented sheer physical strength, stealth, and a potent, feared connection to the realm of the dead and the ancestors. By merging human form with this apex predator, the Tiwanaku were creating a symbol of a shaman or a priest who had successfully transcended their human limitations. This wasn't just a mythical monster, it was an aspirational figure. It represented a spiritual specialist who, through ritual, trance, or the use of sacred plants, could harness the jaguar's power to travel between worlds, to communicate with spirits, to retrieve knowledge from the ancestors, and to perform the most sacred and dangerous of rites. The Chachapuma is the ultimate guardian of the threshold, a being powerful enough to stand at the boundary between life and death and control what passes through. This role as a guardian is made terrifyingly clear by its most common attribute, the severed head or trophy head. In the art of the ancient Andes, the trophy head was not merely a symbol of violence or conquest, it held a deep, complex spiritual significance. It was believed that the head contained a person's life force, their animo or spirit. By taking and ritually preparing a head, that powerful life force could be captured and harnessed. It wasn't destroyed, it was redirected. This captured energy was then offered to the gods, to the earth, or to the ancestors as the ultimate payment or reciprocation for the blessings they provided: rain, fertility, and a bountiful harvest. The Chachapuma, in gripping this head, is acting as the intermediary in this vital exchange. It is the entity that facilitates the transfer of life energy from the human world to the divine, ensuring the continued balance and health of the entire cosmos. The placement of these figures on the gate's pillars is therefore absolutely intentional and profoundly meaningful. They are not hidden away, they are the foundational supports. This tells us that the Tiwanaku understood that the beautiful, orderly cosmos depicted on the lintel, with its benevolent weeping god and celestial attendants, was fundamentally dependent on this darker, more violent transaction. Life could not exist without death. The crops could not grow without a reciprocal offering. The Chachapumas literally hold up the entire spiritual framework, serving as a stark reminder that the gateway to the divine was not entered lightly. To pass through this arch in a ceremonial procession was to symbolically pass between these powerful underworld guardians, acknowledging the sacred bargain that sustained their entire world. They are the enforcers of the cosmic cycle, ensuring that the price for life was always paid. Considering its original position on the Kalasasaya platform, the Gate of the Sun was far more than a static sculpture. It was a carefully calibrated instrument in a vast open-air observatory. The entire temple complex was precisely engineered, its massive stone walls and monoliths positioned to track the sun's annual journey across the sky with astonishing accuracy. On the equinoxes, the 2 days each year when day and night are of equal length, the sun would have risen directly over the center of the eastern wall, bathing the entire courtyard in a perfectly symmetrical flood of light. For a culture that deified the sun and depended on its cycles for survival, this was not just a beautiful sight. It was a moment of profound cosmic balance, a sacred confirmation that the universe was in order. The gate facing east to welcome this event would have been the focal point of this celestial spectacle, its central deity seemingly awakening with the first rays of the equinox sun, a powerful visual representation of the god's connection to the solar cycle itself. But the alignments likely extended far beyond the sun. The high, clear skies of the Altiplano offered the Tiwanaku an unparalleled view of the heavens, and they were masterful astronomers. Another compelling theory points to the importance of the Southern Cross constellation. For cultures in the Southern Hemisphere, the Crux constellation, as it's also known, never dips below the horizon. It circles the south celestial pole, serving as a brilliant and constant navigational and temporal marker. Some researchers suggest that key sightlines from the Kalasasaya, perhaps through specific gaps in its pillars or across its sunken court, were designed to frame the Southern Cross at its most significant positions throughout the night. This would have allowed priest astronomers to tell time with precision and to track the passing seasons based on the constellation's rotation, integrating stellar movements with their solar calendar for an even more comprehensive understanding of cosmic rhythms. This function as an astronomical complex reveals a society deeply invested in predicting not just the seasons, but the very weather upon which their survival hinged. The most critical celestial event for the Tiwanaku was likely the heliacal rising of the Pleiades star cluster. Just before dawn in the southern hemisphere, around the beginning of November, this cluster of stars becomes visible again after a period of absence from the night sky. For the Tiwanaku, and for the Inca who later inherited much of their cosmological knowledge, the clarity and brightness of the Pleiades upon their return were believed to predict the coming rainy season. A bright, clear appearance foretold abundant rains and a successful harvest, while a dim, hazy one suggested drought and hardship. The ability to mark this specific date with precision was a matter of life and death for their empire. It is highly plausible that the Gate of the Sun, with its 48 attendant figures possibly representing a precise calendar count, was the central device used to calculate and announce this all-important date, synchronizing their ritual calendar with the urgent practicalities of agriculture. This seamless fusion of astronomy, agriculture, and architecture is a hallmark of Andean cosmology, where the celestial and the earthly were not separate realms but a single, interconnected system. The Tiwanaku didn't just observe the stars, they lived within a cosmos they believed was directly responsive to their actions. Their temples were not merely places of worship but active mechanisms for maintaining harmony between the human world and the divine. By aligning their structures with the sun, moon, and stars, they were participating in a sacred dialogue with the universe, ensuring that the cycles of planting and harvest, of rain and drought, would continue in their proper order. The Gate of the Sun stands as the most eloquent symbol of this worldview, a stone interface between the earth and the sky, a permanent testament to a civilization that sought to build its home in the very heart of the cosmos. So where exactly was this magnificent gateway meant to stand? Today, visitors to the site find it positioned near the northwest corner of a massive, walled platform known as the Kalasasaya, but the truth is, it's not in its original home. It was moved, likely in antiquity, after the monolith fractured. This displacement is the root of a fascinating and ongoing archaeological debate that strikes at the very heart of understanding the gate's purpose. Was it always intended for the Kalasasaya, or did it once serve as the dramatic entrance to a completely different and far more mysterious part of the city, the semi-subterranean temple known as the Chachapuma? Let's first explore the case for the Kalasasaya. This structure is one of the largest and most imposing at Tiwanaku, a giant rectangular platform measuring over 130 meters by 120 meters, surrounded by a formidable wall of towering stone pillars and perfectly fitted infill blocks. Its name, given much later by the Aymara people, means standing stones, a fitting description. The entire eastern side of this platform is essentially a grand staircase, perfectly aligned to frame the equinox sunrise. It's widely believed to have been a primary ceremonial center, a stage for public rituals that would have been visible to large crowds gathered in the adjacent plaza. Placing the Gate of the Sun here, perhaps as the entrance to an inner sanctum atop the platform, makes immense symbolic sense. Its iconography, with the solar headdress and celestial attendants, would have been the ultimate visual climax for a ceremony focused on the sun's power. Imagine a procession of elaborately dressed priests ascending the main stairs, passing through this monumental archway to perform rituals at the very moment the sun's rays illuminated the central deity. It's a powerful, logical narrative that positions the gate as the crowning jewel of Tiwanaku's most important public temple. However, a compelling alternative theory places the gate not on a high platform open to the sky, but down in the enclosed subterranean world of the Akapana. This is a completely different kind of structure, a sunken rectangular courtyard, its walls lined with a haunting array of stone heads projecting from the masonry, each one with unique, expressive features. The atmosphere in the Akapana is intimate, powerful, and deeply spiritual, evoking a connection to the earth and the underworld rather than the sky. The argument for this location hinges on the gate's proportions. Some archaeologists have noted that the gate's dimensions are a near-perfect match for the width of the Akapana's main entrance. It's been proposed that the gate could have originally capped this entrance, creating a breathtaking transition from the bright, open plaza into the shadowy, ancestral world of the sunken court. This interpretation adds a profound new layer of meaning to the gate's symbolism. Suddenly, the Chachapumas at the base aren't just symbolic guardians, they are literal gatekeepers to a realm of ancestors and earth spirits. The weeping staff god becomes a lord of both the celestial and the chthonic, a deity whose tears nourish the deep earth as well as the surface crops. Passing through the gate into the Akapana would have been a visceral experience of moving from the world of the living into a space dominated by the power of the past and the underworld. This debate is about more than just real estate, it's about function and meaning. A gate on the Kalasasaya suggests a public-facing, celebratory function tied to solar cycles and state power. A gate on the Akapana suggests a more exclusive, esoteric function tied to ancestor veneration, earth deities, and perhaps even rituals of death and renewal. The two theories are not necessarily mutually exclusive. The gate could have been moved from one location to the other during the long history of the city, its meaning evolving with its placement. Its displacement adds a final, frustrating, and captivating layer to the mystery. Without knowing its true context, we are left to interpret its powerful symbols in a vacuum, forever wondering if we are looking at a monument to the sun or a portal to the underworld, or perhaps in the complex Tiwanaku worldview, it was always both. And this grand cosmic design, carved so perfectly into a single stone slab, almost certainly extended its meaning far beyond the city limits of Tiwanaku itself, reaching across the deep blue waters of Lake Titicaca to the most sacred place in the entire Andean world, Isla del Sol, the Island of the Sun. To understand the Gate of the Sun fully, we must widen our view from the archaeological site to the entire sacred geography of the region, a landscape the Tiwanaku people would have seen as alive with spiritual power and meaning. The vast, high-altitude expanse of Lake Titicaca was not just a source of food and water, it was the very cradle of creation, a place where the world began. For the Inca, who arrived centuries later and absorbed these ancient beliefs into their own mythology, Isla del Sol was the undisputed birthplace of the sun god Inti, the site where the creator deity Viracocha summoned the sun, moon, and stars into existence from the depths of the lake. But the Incas were building upon a much older tradition, one that the Tiwanaku almost certainly revered and helped to establish, viewing the island and the lake as the heart of their spiritual universe. The connection between the gate and the island might seem distant at first, but it becomes strikingly clear when we consider the Tiwanaku's mastery of their environment. Isla del Sol lies just off the Copacabana Peninsula, a significant distance from the city itself, yet the Tiwanaku state exerted influence over this entire region. They would have known the island intimately, not just as a place of myth, but as a tangible, powerful location visible from the high points of their city. It's highly plausible that the island served as a major pilgrimage destination for the Tiwanaku faithful, a journey across the water to the very source of the sun's power. The Gate of the Sun, with its radiant solar deity, could have been a key part of this spiritual journey, either as the starting point for processions heading toward the lake or as a symbolic destination in itself, a representation of the island's sacred power brought home to the urban center. For a pilgrim who had made the arduous trip to Isla del Sol, standing before the gate back in Tiwanaku would have been a powerful reminder of that experience, a recreation of the island's energy in the heart of the capital. This idea of the gate as a symbolic landscape is one of the most compelling theories in modern archaeology. The entire monument might be a detailed map or a concentrated model of the Tiwanaku worldview. The central staff god in this interpretation is not just a representation of the sun. He is Isla del Sol itself, the place where the sun is born. The massive stone block of the gate becomes a symbolic embodiment of the island rising from the lake. The intricate carving surrounding the central figure could then represent not just celestial bodies, but the topography of the entire sacred basin, the surrounding mountains, the flow of rivers into the lake, and the routes taken by pilgrims. The 48 running figures might be mapping the journey across the water or the ritual circuits around the island's own sacred sites. This transforms the gate from a religious icon into a cosmogram, a device that collapses the entire sacred landscape into a single, portable, and powerful object, allowing the Tiwanaku to physically interact with their spiritual geography without ever leaving their city. The architectural and artistic evidence supporting this connection is profound. On Isla del Sol itself, archaeologists have uncovered Tiwanaku-era artifacts and ceremonial centers, proving they were active there. But more tellingly, the same precise, masterful stoneworking found at Tiwanaku is present on the island in structures like the Inca-era Pilco Quema, which was likely built atop an older Tiwanaku foundation. The Tiwanaku style, with its iconic images of front-facing deities with radiating headdresses, appears on pottery and textiles found throughout the lake region, creating a visual language that unified this sacred territory. The Gate of the Sun is the ultimate expression of that style, suggesting that the city and the island were two poles of a single, integrated sacred circuit. The city of Tiwanaku, with its man-made mountains and plazas, was a constructed echo of the natural sacredness of Isla del Sol. One was the birthplace of the sun in myth, the other was the place where that sun's power was harnessed, measured, and ritually managed for the benefit of human civilization. Ultimately, this relationship reveals a civilization that saw no separation between the built environment and the natural world. For the Tiwanaku, the entire Altiplano was a living temple, and their architecture was a way of participating in and amplifying its inherent spiritual power. The Gate of the Sun stands as the master key to understanding this philosophy. It is a monument that is at once a god, a calendar, a star chart, and a map. It connects the city to the lake, the earth to the sky, and the people to the source of all life. By carving the essence of Isla del Sol into the heart of their city, the Tiwanaku were not just decorating a gateway, they were anchoring their entire world to the most powerful place they knew, ensuring that every ritual performed, every celestial observation made, and every person who passed through its arch would be forever connected to the mythical birthplace of the sun itself. Yet to truly appreciate the feline's power, we must look beyond the gate itself to the sprawling canvas of Tiwanaku art, where these creatures stalk through every medium. On exquisitely woven textiles, the puma's snarling face is a repeating motif, its geometric power echoing across the fabric worn by elites, Ceremonial pottery, from finely painted kiros to massive storage vessels, is often adorned with stylized jaguar spots or full-bodied depictions of the animal in mid-prowl. Even the small, personal objects, gorgets, snuff trays, and ritual pins frequently feature feline imagery, suggesting that this symbol was not reserved for grand state propaganda, but was a deeply personal, ubiquitous element of their spiritual identity. This wasn't a minor theme. It was a central pillar of their visual language, a constant reminder that the boundary between the human world and the primal, spiritual one was always thin, always guarded by this potent, predatory energy. This profound connection finds its most dramatic and unsettling expression in the concept of transformation. For the Tiwanaku, the jaguar or puma was not just a spirit animal, it was a state of being that a powerful person could actively achieve. We see this in stone carvings and pottery decorations that depict anthropomorphic figures clearly human in overall form, but adorned with unmistakable feline attributes, spotted skin, sharp fangs, and powerful claws. These are not literal monsters. They are likely representations of shamans or priests who, through intense ritual, the use of psychoactive plants or deep trance states, were believed to harness the feline's essence and temporarily become a bridge between worlds. In this transformed state, the shaman could travel to the underworld to commune with ancestors, retrieve knowledge, or battle malevolent spirits threatening the community. The feline, therefore, symbolizes an attainable form of ultimate power, a spiritual technology that allowed certain individuals to transcend their human limitations and perform the most sacred, dangerous work for their people. Ultimately, the pervasive presence of the jaguar and puma throughout Tiwanaku culture reveals a worldview that embraced a necessary, sacred duality. The celestial order represented by the sun god on the gate was only one half of the equation. It was balanced and supported by this fierce chthonic power. The society that could precisely track the equinoxes and engineer massive stone structures also understood that their survival depended on forces far wilder and more ancient than the sun, the raw, untamed energy of the earth itself, perfectly embodied by the most powerful predator they knew. The feline was the guardian of this truth, a symbol that for life to flourish in the ordered fields of the Altiplano, it must always be in respectful dialogue with the unpredictable, demanding, and ultimately life-giving power of the underworld. Soaring above the earthly domain of the puma and the underworld realm of the serpent, the condor completes the sacred trilogy of Andean cosmology, embodying the upper world, the celestial realm of the sun, stars, and unimpeded freedom. If the jaguar is the lord of the tangible, earthly plane, the condor is the undisputed master of the intangible heavens, a being of pure spirit and vast perspective. This magnificent bird, with its incredible wingspan that allows it to ride the high mountain thermals for hours without a single wing beat, was seen by the Tiwanaku as the ultimate messenger, a creature capable of traveling between the world of humans and the realm of the gods with effortless grace. Its flight was a direct connection to the divine, and its appearance in the sky was never just a natural event. It was a sign, an omen, a celestial communiqué. This profound symbolism is woven directly into the fabric of the Gate of the Sun, though in a more subtle way than the fearsome Chachapumas. Look closely at the objects held by the central staff god. Those are not simple staffs of office, they are intricate scepters, and each one is meticulously topped with the distinct, hooked beak and powerful visage of a condor's head. This is a critical detail. It directly links the supreme deity to the upper world, visually proclaiming that his authority extends not just over the earth and its people, but over the entire cosmos. He doesn't just command the sun, he commands the very creature that can fly up and touch it. The condor-headed staffs are his instruments of celestial power, the means through which his will is communicated across the heavens. Furthermore, the 48 winged attendants surrounding him, often called flying figures, may not have literal bird wings, but their feathered backs and dynamic, airborne posture strongly suggest a shared association with this avian realm. They are his celestial court, spirit messengers operating in the condors' domain, running their eternal circuit through the sky to carry out his divine orders. This creates a perfectly balanced, three-tiered universe, a concept central to Andean belief that the Tiwanaku clearly shared. The serpent, often represented in their art and thought, though less explicitly on the gate itself, represented the underworld or Uku Pacha, the realm of the dead, the ancestors, and the primordial origins of life, often associated with water and the depths of the earth. The puma or jaguar represented the K-Pacha, the middle world, the here and now, the tangible earth where humans live, hunt, and cultivate. And the condor, in its majestic flight, represented the Honan Pacha, the upper world, the future, the world of the gods, the sun, and the celestial bodies. A harmonious life depended on maintaining balance between these three worlds, and the Tiwanaku elite likely presented themselves as the essential mediators of this balance. Their rituals, their architecture, and their art, epitomized by the Gate of the Sun, were all designed to facilitate this communication, to ensure that the blessings of the upper world reached the middle world, and that the offerings from the middle world were accepted by the depths below. The gate, therefore, is far more than a portrait of a god. It is a complete cosmological map. In one integrated image, it captures the entire Tiwanaku universe. The central deity, through his condor-topped staffs, rules the Honan Pacha. The running attendants operate within the celestial sphere, perhaps as personified stars or constellations. The supporting pillars, guarded by the earth-bound Chachapumas, anchor the structure firmly in the K-Pacha, while their connection to sacrifice and trophy heads hints at their role in managing the offerings and energies of the Uku Pacha. Every entity on the gate has its place within this vertical cosmos, from the highest celestial messenger to the most primal earth guardian. This intricate symbolism reveals a society that saw itself as an integral part of a vast, interconnected system, where every ritual, every astronomical observation, and every act of governance was performed with the conscious intention of sustaining the delicate equilibrium between the world below, the world within, and the world above. But the Gate of the Sun was not alone in its sacred duty. Not far from its current resting place stands another, far more enigmatic monument, often overshadowed by its famous sibling yet holding secrets just as profound: the Gate of the Moon, or Puerta del Luna. Carved from the same distinctive red sandstone and exhibiting a strikingly similar architectural style, this smaller gateway presents a fascinating parallel universe of Tiwanaku symbolism. While the Sun Gate soars with celestial ambition, the Moon Gate feels more intimate, its carvings perhaps even more mysterious due to their unique preservation and subtly different artistic language. Where the Sun Gate is fractured, the Moon Gate is remarkably intact, offering a clearer, more complete vision of the original craftsmanship. Its surface is a dense tapestry of intricate, deeply carved figures, yet they are arranged differently, not in regimented rows running toward a central god, but in a more complex, interlocking pattern that suggests a different narrative, a different kind of power. The most immediate and captivating difference lies in its central figure, or rather, the lack of one. Unlike the Sun Gate's commanding, front-facing staff god, the Moon Gate does not feature a single, dominant deity at its heart. Instead, its iconography is more distributed, a field of repeated, elegant figures that some scholars interpret as a series of graceful, kneeling attendants. The style is softer, the lines more fluid. This has led to the compelling theory that the Moon Gate was dedicated not to a solar, masculine principle, but to a lunar or perhaps a feminine deity, a powerful mother goddess or earth spirit who complemented the solar god's authority. In many Andean cosmologies, the moon was associated with fertility, water, women, and the cyclical rhythms of life, all vital forces for an agricultural society. This gate, then, might represent the other half of a sacred partnership, the necessary balance to the sun's overwhelming brilliance. Examining the specific figures carved into the moon gate only deepens this interpretation. They are often described as profile attendants, depicted in side view rather than the frontal, confronting posture of the sun god. Many appear to be holding objects, though their exact nature is debated. They could be ceremonial staffs, flowering plants, or even serpents, another powerful symbol of the earth and the underworld. The overall feeling is less about celestial order and command, and more about reverence, offering, and connection to the natural world. If the sun gate is a proclamation of state power and cosmic dominion, the moon gate feels like an invocation, a prayer for fertility and the sustaining forces of life. Its preservation allows us to see the finer details of Tiwanaku artistry, the careful cross hatching on headdresses, the delicate rendering of hands with a clarity that the damaged sun gate can no longer provide. The existence of these two gates standing in the same ceremonial complex suggests the Tiwanaku world was built on a foundation of duality and balance. The sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine, the celestial and the chthonic, these were not opposing forces but complementary ones that required each other to create a whole and functioning universe. The gate of the sun served as a very public, very imposing symbol of the state's divine mandate, its connection to the ultimate source of light and power. The gate of the moon, potentially dedicated to a more intimate, earth-focused aspect of divinity, completes that picture, acknowledging the equally vital power of growth, water, and regeneration. Together, they form a complete theological statement, a stone-carved dialogue between two halves of a single sacred whole, reminding us that to understand the Tiwanaku, we must look not just at their most monumental achievements, but at the intricate partnerships that gave their world its meaning. Framing the entire central tableau, running along the top and down the sides of the monument, is a repeating geometric motif that is deceptively simple yet profoundly significant, the recessed step or zigzag pattern. This is not merely a decorative border, it is a visual anchor, a symbolic framework that contains the cosmic drama unfolding within it. This specific design, a series of right angles creating a staircase-like effect, is one of the most enduring and recognizable symbols of the Andes, found everywhere from the monumental architecture of Tiwanaku to the exquisite textiles of the Weri and the imperial stonework of the Inca, who later called it the Chacana or Andean cross. Its persistent presence across centuries and cultures tells us we are looking at a fundamental piece of the Andean spiritual vocabulary, a core concept so important it was literally built into the walls of their most sacred structures. So what does this stepped pattern actually represent? The most widespread and compelling interpretation sees it as a direct symbol of the three-tiered Andean cosmos. Each horizontal level of the zigzag can be seen as a distinct plane of existence. The top line represents the Honan Pacha, the upper world of the sun, stars, and celestial gods. The middle line symbolizes the K Pacha, the middle world of everyday human life, the earth, and the present moment. The bottom line signifies the Uku Pacha, the inner world, the underworld of the ancestors' origins and regenerative powers. The steps connecting them are not separators but pathways, illustrating the constant communication and exchange of energy that must flow between these three realms for the universe to remain in balance. On the gate of the sun, this framing motif essentially places the entire scene, the staff god, his attendants, the celestial and earthly symbols, within this comprehensive cosmological context. It is a constant visual reminder that the events depicted are not happening in a vacuum, but are part of an eternal, interconnected dance between all layers of reality. This idea of connection naturally leads to a second powerful meaning, the staircase itself. The repeating steps can be visualized as a literal staircase, a symbolic ladder linking the earth to the heavens. This transforms the pattern from a static diagram into a dynamic instrument of spiritual travel. For a shaman or a priest in a ritual state of consciousness, This design could have served as a meditative focal point, a visual guide for an imagined ascent from the mundane world of the K-Pacha up into the divine realm of the Hanan-Pacha to commune with the gods, or a descent into the Uku-Pacha to seek wisdom from the ancestors. The gate, therefore, wasn't just a picture to be seen, it was a tool to be used, its architecture facilitating a spiritual journey. The act of passing physically through the archway, which was itself framed by this symbolic staircase, would have been a powerful ritual reenactment of this journey, moving the participant between worlds in a profoundly experiential way. Beyond the spiritual, the step motif also likely held a deeply personal and societal meaning related to levels of consciousness and enlightenment. Just as the stairs connect three worlds, they could represent an individual's path toward greater understanding and personal growth. Each step upward might symbolize overcoming a challenge, gaining new knowledge, or achieving a higher state of awareness, moving closer to the wisdom of the celestial gods. Conversely, a step downward could represent connecting with ancestral knowledge, introspection, and understanding the foundational forces of life and nature. In a broader sense, the pattern could also reflect the structure of Tiwanaku society itself, a hierarchical system where each level, from the commoners to the priests and the ruling elite, had a specific role to play, all interconnected and essential for the stability and functioning of the whole empire. The steps signify that while there are different levels, they are all part of a single, integrated structure. The genius of this symbol lies in its beautiful multiplicity. It isn't just one thing, it is all these things simultaneously. It is a map of the universe, a staircase for the soul, and a blueprint for society. For the Tiwanaku, these concepts were inseparable. The harmony of the cosmos depended on the harmony of the empire, which in turn depended on the spiritual alignment of each individual. The recessed step motif on the gate of the sun is the ultimate expression of this holistic worldview. It quietly, elegantly frames the entire monument, insisting that the power of the weeping god, the motion of the celestial attendants, and the vigilance of the underworld guardians can only be understood within the context of this three-part, interconnected, and climbable universe. It is the architectural glue that holds the entire cosmic vision together. But for all its perfection and power, the gate of the sun holds a tantalizing and often overlooked imperfection, a silent clue that points toward a sudden and catastrophic end. Look closely at the lower right quadrant of the monument, and you'll notice something startling, a section where the intricate, deep relief carving seems to simply stop. The surface here is noticeably smoother, the andesite less worked, with only the faintest ghost lines of what appear to be the beginnings of figures, as if the sculptor's hand was lifted and never returned to finish the task. This isn't damage from time or erosion. It has all the hallmarks of a work in progress, abandoned before the final details could be chiseled into the unforgiving stone. This single, unfinished patch opens a window into one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient Americas, the astonishingly rapid collapse of the Tiwanaku state, and the possibility that this, their greatest masterwork, was never actually completed. The notion that a cataclysm could have interrupted such a vital project forces us to re-examine the final century of Tiwanaku's dominance. This was not a civilization that showed signs of a long, slow decline. Archaeological evidence paints a picture of a peak followed by a precipitous and shocking fall. So what could have been powerful enough to bring a society of such immense organizational skill and spiritual resolve to its knees in what seems like a historical blink of an eye? The most compelling and scientifically supported theory points not to an invading army, but to a far more insidious and inescapable enemy, a climate disaster of epic proportions. Core samples taken from the bottom of Lake Titicaca and from glaciers in the nearby Andes tell a story of a prolonged and devastating mega-drought that gripped the region for decades, perhaps even a full century, starting around the year 1000 AD. Imagine the slow, creeping horror of such an event for a people utterly dependent on the delicate balance of sun and rain. The Tiwanaku were hydrological geniuses. Their famed raised field system, or suka collis, was a masterpiece of agricultural engineering that used canal water to protect crops from frost and create rich, productive land. But this entire system was fed by the predictable rains that filled the rivers and maintained the level of Lake Titicaca. As the years turned into decades with significantly less rainfall, the lifeblood of the empire simply began to evaporate. The lake level would have dropped dramatically, leaving the intricate canal networks dry. The frosts would have bitten harder on the unprotected fields. Crop yields would have plummeted and then failed entirely. The very foundation of Tiwanaku's power, their ability to produce a massive agricultural surplus that fed a large urban population and supported a powerful elite, crumbled into dust. In such a scenario, the priorities of a society change overnight. The immense labor and resources required to quarry, transport, and carve a 10-ton religious monument suddenly become an unaffordable luxury. The artisans who were painstakingly pecking away at the gate of the sun with stone hammers and bronze chisels would have been redirected to more desperate tasks, perhaps trying to dig ever deeper canals in a futile attempt to reach the receding waters of the lake, or simply struggling to find enough food to feed their own families. The spiritual crisis would have been as profound as the physical one. The central deity on the gate, the god who wept life-giving rain, must have seemed like a cruel mockery as the skies remained relentlessly clear and the land withered. The entire cosmological order, so beautifully carved into the stone, would have felt broken. The abandonment of the gate's final carving becomes a powerful symbol of this dual collapse, the failure of both their physical world and their spiritual covenant. It stands as a haunting monument not just to what the Tiwanaku achieved, but to what they so suddenly lost, a masterpiece forever frozen in time, just one stroke of the chisel away from being complete. Centuries after the last stones were laid at Tiwanaku and its great gate stood silent under the sun, a new power arose in the Andes that would look upon these ruins with a mixture of awe and ancestral pride. The Inca Empire, at the zenith of its power in the 15th century, encountered the remains of Tiwanaku not as archaeologists would, but as pilgrims. They saw in these colossal ruins a sacred landscape, a hallowed ground they called Tepecola, the stone in the center, and they wove it directly into the very foundation of their own origin story. For the Inca, this was not merely an abandoned city. It was the place where the world began, the site where their creator god, Viracocha, summoned the sun, the moon, and the first ancestors into being. And standing at the heart of this sacred geography was the Gate of the Sun, a monument they believed was the work of the gods themselves, or at the very least of the first Inca. This Inca interpretation represents a fascinating, layered case of historical reinterpretation. When Inca emperors and priests journeyed to Tiwanaku, they were not trying to reconstruct Tiwanaku history as we understand it today. They were engaging in a form of spiritual archaeology, appropriating the physical past to legitimize their own political present. They looked at the gate's central figure with its radiant headdress and saw neither a Tiwanaku staff god nor a celestial calendar. They saw Viracocha, their own supreme deity, or perhaps the creator's first son, the sun god in Thai. In their eyes, the 48 running figures were not celestial attendants or a count of days, but the myriad ethnic groups and nations that Viracocha had created and which the Inca, as his chosen people, were destined to rule. The gate's symbolism was seamlessly co-opted into a narrative of Inca destiny and divine right, transforming it from a Tiwanaku theological text into an Inca imperial prophecy carved in stone. This process of reinterpretation was likely not born of ignorance, but of a deliberate and sophisticated political strategy. The Inca were masters of ideological incorporation. When they conquered a new territory, they would often absorb the local populace's most powerful deities into their own pantheon, placing them in a subordinate position to their own sun god, Intai. This effectively neutralized potential points of religious resistance while creating a unified imperial theology. Their treatment of Tiwanaku was the ultimate expression of this tactic. By claiming this vastly older, deeply impressive site as their own place of origin, they were asserting a primordial and divine claim to supremacy over the entire Andes. The Gate of the Sun, as the most visually striking and complex artifact at the site, became the centerpiece of this claim. It was proof in stone that their empire was not a recent invention, but the fulfillment of a destiny set in motion at the dawn of time. Yet, for all their reverence, the Inca chronicles that describe Tiwanaku and its gate offer frustratingly little help in deciphering its original Tiwanaku meaning. Spanish chroniclers like Pedro Cieza de Leon and Bernabé Cobo, who recorded Inca oral histories in the 16th century, faithfully passed down the Incas' own beliefs about the site. They tell us the Inca believed the massive stones were moved by the supernatural power of sound, and that the gate and its surrounding monoliths were the petrified remains of a primordial race of giants. These stories are captivating, but they are Inca stories, filtered through the lens of their own mythology and recorded by European men with their own cultural biases. They tell us what the Inca believed in the 15th century, not what the Tiwanaku intended 1,000 years earlier. The original name of the gate, the specific rituals performed around it, the exact identity of its weeping god, all of this was likely already lost to time, leaving a vacuum the Inca were more than happy to fill with their own powerful narrative. This leaves us with a poignant and complex legacy. The Inca inheritance of the Gate of the Sun is a powerful reminder that ancient monuments are never static. Their meaning evolves with each new generation that encounters them. The Inca did not so much misunderstand the gate's symbolism as they actively re-understood it, bending its ancient power to serve the needs of a new empire. They became the guardians of its physical presence, preventing its further ruin and cementing its status as a place of pilgrimage, even as they overwrote its original story with their own. In doing so, they ensured the gate's survival, but they also placed a permanent, interpretive veil between the Tiwanaku civilization and our modern attempts to understand it. The gate we see today is therefore a palimpsest, a document written over by time, where the original Tiwanaku text is still visible, but forever intertwined with the bold, imperial script of the Inca who claimed it as their own. The quest to unlock the Gate of the Sun's secrets entered a new era in the 20th century, shifting from pure speculation to a more disciplined scientific inquiry. This modern chapter of decipherment is built on two powerful pillars: the precise measurements of archaeoastronomy and the cultural insights of ethnography. It began with a controversial but undeniably passionate figure, Austrian engineer Arthur Posnansky. Arriving in Bolivia in the early 1900s, Posnansky became utterly captivated by Tiwanaku and devoted decades of his life to its study. His most famous and heavily debated contribution was his astronomical analysis of the Kalasasaya temple complex. Using its alignments, he calculated that Tiwanaku was founded around 15,000 BC, an impossibly ancient date that would place it at the heart of a lost cradle of civilization. While his chronology has been thoroughly debunked by modern dating methods, which firmly place the city's peak 1,000 years ago, Posnansky's core methodology was revolutionary. He was among the first to treat the site not just as art or architecture, but as a sophisticated astronomical observatory, arguing that its builders possessed a profound understanding of celestial movements. His work, though flawed, planted a crucial seed, pushing future researchers to consider the stars as a key to understanding the gate's symbolism. This more grounded, scientific approach was championed by the next generation, most notably Bolivian archaeologist Carlos Ponce Sanguinés. As the director of the National Center for Archaeological Research in Tiwanaku, Ponce Sanguinés led extensive excavations and restoration work throughout the 1960s and 70s, providing the first solid archaeological context for the gate and the city it belonged to. He systematically dismantled Poznański's inflated timeline through rigorous carbon-14 dating, firmly establishing Tiwanaku as a powerful, purely indigenous pre-Incan state. His work shifted the focus back onto the Tiwanaku people themselves, away from fantasies of outside influence. While he proposed his own interpretations of the gate's iconography, often seeing it as a calendar tied to the solar year, his greatest legacy was creating a firm factual foundation upon which all future, more nuanced theories could be built. He proved that the real story of Tiwanaku was remarkable enough without needing to invent ancient astronauts or lost white races. The torch of Poznański's astronomical curiosity was picked up and refined by modern archaeoastronomers armed with powerful new tools. Scholars like William Sullivan and later Giulio Magli used sophisticated computer software to model the skies over Tiwanaku as they would have appeared a millennium ago. This digital stargazing allowed them to test specific theories with a precision earlier researchers could only dream of. One compelling hypothesis that has gained significant traction links the 48 attendant figures on the gate to the cyclical movements of Venus. The planet's 584-day synodic period, which was sacred to the Maya and likely known to the Tiwanaku, could be broken down into units that resonate with the gate's imagery. Other models have focused on the Pleiades star cluster, whose heliacal rising just before dawn in November marked the critical start of the rainy season and the planting calendar. The gate, in this view, becomes a complex mnemonic device, a stone computer that helped priest astronomers predict these vitally important celestial events, marrying the spiritual power of the stars with the practical needs of an agricultural empire. Perhaps the most profound shift in modern interpretation has come from turning to the living descendants of the Tiwanaku, the Aymara people. Ethnographers and anthropologists began to deeply study Aymara cosmology, language, and oral traditions, discovering a cultural continuity that spans centuries. They found that key concepts in the Aymara worldview, such as the three-tiered universe of the Alakpacha, the upper world, Aka Pacha, this world, and Manaka Pacha, the inner world, provide an incredibly powerful lens through which to view the gate's symbolism. The central figure isn't just a generic sun god. He can be understood as Tunupa, a powerful Aymara deity associated with volcanoes, weather, and the cardinal directions, who wept tears that became rivers. The winged attendants aren't abstract angels, they are Achakillas, mountain spirits and ancestral beings who inhabit the landscape. This ethnographic approach doesn't give us a simple, one-to-one translation, but it offers something far more valuable, a cultural framework. It allows us to see the gate not as a cryptic puzzle to be solved, but as a profound theological statement, a representation of a living, breathing world, where the celestial, the earthly, and the ancestral are in constant, sacred conversation. So, where does this leave us today, after a century of modern research which theories have truly gained traction? The idea of the gate as a complex calendar, likely tracking both solar and Venusian cycles, is now widely accepted by mainstream scholars. The interpretation of the central figure as a master of time, weather, and fertility, supported by Aymara ethnographic parallels, holds far more weight than the old Viracocha label imposed by the Inca. The 48 figures are generally seen as a celestial court, a combination of deified ancestors and astronomical markers, and the overarching concept of the gate as a cosmogram, a map of the entire Tiwanaku universe, is perhaps the most powerful and enduring modern understanding. The debunked ideas are just as important. We can now confidently set aside Poznański's extreme chronology, von Däniken's ancient astronauts, and any diffusionist theories that sought to credit anyone but the Tiwanaku people for their own genius. The modern decipherment hasn't yielded a single, simple answer, and it likely never will. Instead, it has given us a rich, multifaceted, and deeply human understanding of a monument that stands as a testament to one civilization's brilliant attempt to carve their place in the cosmos into stone, ensuring their vision would endure long after their voices fell silent. For generations, the imposing stone ruins of Tiwanaku have been more than an archaeological site for the local Aymara people. They are a living landscape, a place they call Tepe Kola, the central stone, the very heart of their ancestral world. While Western scholars arrived with measuring tapes and theories, the Aymara have always carried something different. A rich oral history and a cosmological world you passed down through countless generations, offering a profoundly human and spiritual lens through which to view the gate of the sun. Their interpretations aren't found in academic journals but are woven into the fabric of their daily lives, their rituals, and their language, providing a vital counterpoint to external analysis and reminding us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved but to be understood. Where a visiting archaeologist might see a complex calendar in the 48 figures, an Aymara elder might see a council of Achakillas, the revered mountain spirits and ancestral guardians who watch over the community and the land. These are not abstract celestial bodies but specific, powerful entities residing in the peaks that ring the Altiplano, each one a protector of a particular place and people. The central figure, so often labeled a generic staff god or Viracocha by outsiders, is understood by many in the Aymara community as Tunupa, a foundational deity of immense power and sorrow. Tunupa is a complex figure, a teacher, a traveler, and a volcano deity whose tears, shed during a great cataclysm or period of profound sadness, are said to have formed the rivers and Lake Titicaca itself. This perspective transforms the gate from a cold astronomical device into a moving origin story, a testament to divine emotion that literally gave life to the harsh landscape the people call home. This indigenous knowledge system operates on principles that often diverge radically from Western scientific thought. Academia seeks a single, evidence-based truth, a definitive answer to what it is. The Aymara perspective is often layered, embracing duality and spiritual truth. For instance, the concept of Pacha is utterly central and almost untranslatable, meaning simultaneously time, space, and the entire cosmos. It's not segmented into past, present, and future as we know it. In the Aymara language, the past is conceptualized as lying ahead because it is known and visible, while the future lies behind as it is unseen. This fundamentally different way of perceiving existence suggests that the gate of the sun's symbols might not represent a linear count of days, but a holistic map of Pacha itself, a simultaneous representation of cosmic order, ancestral time, and sacred geography. The importance of this living interpretation cannot be overstated. For too long, the narrative surrounding ancient sites like Tiwanaku was dominated by voices from outside, who often dismissed indigenous accounts as myth or superstition, overlooking them in favor of more rational, but often equally speculative theories about aliens or lost civilizations. This represents a profound intellectual loss. The Aymara are not merely adjacent to this history. They are its direct inheritors, their culture and beliefs representing the closest continuous thread back to the minds that conceived the gate. Their oral traditions are a form of data, their rituals a form of preserved knowledge. When an Aymara community makes an offering to the Achakillas for a good harvest, they are not just performing a ceremony, they are engaging in a practice that likely has its roots in the very same worldview that justified the immense labor of carving the gate, a worldview where reciprocity with the spiritual forces of nature is essential for survival. Engaging with this perspective does not require discarding scientific archaeology. Rather, it invites a richer, more collaborative form of understanding. It challenges researchers to ask different questions. Instead of just what celestial body does this represent? They can also ask what spirit does this invoke, Or how does this symbol reflect a principle of balance and reciprocity? This synergy is where the most exciting modern interpretations are born, where the precise astronomical calculations of the gate's alignments can coexist with the understanding that those same stars are also living spirits in a vast, animated cosmos. The gate of the sun, in the end, is not a puzzle with one missing piece, but a prism, and the wisdom of the Aymara people offers a unique and essential light through which to view it, revealing colors and depths that pure academia alone could never illuminate. But this magnificent gateway, for all its enduring power, carries a visible and profound wound, a massive vertical crack that runs from the top of the lintel down through the center of the carving, stopping just above the head of the central deity. This fracture is not a small flaw, it's a fundamental breach in the monument's integrity, a stark imperfection in an otherwise masterful work of stone. The story of how this happened is a historical mystery in itself, a puzzle with three compelling suspects: human malice, the raw power of nature, or a shocking, intentional act of faith by the very people who built it. The most immediate and visceral explanation points to deliberate vandalism, likely during the turbulent years following the Spanish conquest. We know that zealous Catholic priests, in their campaign to extinguish indigenous religions, systematically targeted and destroyed sacred objects and temples across the Andes. Idols were smashed, mummies were burned, and golden artifacts were melted down for bullion. The Gate of the Sun, as an undeniable and powerful symbol of a pagan faith, would have been a prime target for such iconoclasm. The fracture's clean, vertical nature could suggest a concentrated attack, perhaps with heavy tools or even levers, in an attempt to topple the god from his pedestal and prove the superiority of the new Christian faith. This narrative frames the crack as a scar of colonialism, a permanent mark of the violent cultural erasure that accompanied the Spanish arrival. Yet, the Altiplano is one of the most seismically active regions on Earth, sitting atop a volatile network of tectonic fault lines. Major earthquakes are not occasional events here. They are a recurring and powerful force of nature that has shaped the landscape for millennia. The Tiwanaku were master engineers who built their structures to withstand these tremors with their flexible, mortarless masonry. But the Gate of the Sun is different. It's a single, massive slab of stone, and unlike the interlocking walls of the Kalasasaya, it lacks flexibility. A powerful quake could have easily caused the monolith to sway and crack under its own immense weight and rigidity. The fact that the gate was found not toppled over, but still standing with a clean fracture, lends some credence to this theory. It suggests a catastrophic shockwave traveling through the ground, a force of nature so immense that even the Tiwanaku's finest work could not completely withstand it. But the most intriguing and unsettling possibility is that the damage was not an accident or an attack from outside, but a deliberate, ritual act performed by the Tiwanaku themselves. We know that around the year 1000 AD, a catastrophic mega-drought began to strangle the region, leading to the civilization's rapid collapse. As their world literally dried up around them, their faith in the old ways would have been severely tested. The central deity on the gate, the god who was supposed to weep life-giving rain, had failed them. In a state of ultimate spiritual crisis, the priests might have performed a final, desperate ritual, the symbolic killing of the god. By fracturing the stone, perhaps with fire and water using the same thermal shock technique that quarried it, they could have been attempting to break a perceived curse or to release the trapped spiritual energy within the monument, forcing a reset of the broken cosmic order. Alternatively, it could have been an act of decommissioning, a way to ritually kill the gate's power before abandoning the city, ensuring that its sacred energy would not fall into the wrong hands or linger as a dangerous, unattended force. This theory transforms the crack from a mark of destruction into a profound, albeit tragic, artifact of a people's final communication with their gods. When we step back from the individual symbols and alignments to look at the Gate of the Sun as a whole, a far more profound and unified concept emerges, one that transcends the sum of its parts. This was not merely a billboard for state propaganda or a simple astronomical chart. It was almost certainly designed to be a functional portal, a liminal space where the boundaries between worlds became thin enough to cross. The Tiwanaku worldview, as best we can understand it, did not separate the physical from the spiritual. Instead, they saw their entire reality as a series of interpenetrating layers. The gate was the ultimate architectural expression of this belief, an engineered vortex of sacred energy, a permanent doorway installed in the heart of their capital, designed to facilitate a controlled and powerful interaction with the forces that governed their universe. Consider its original placement and intended use. Whether it stood atop the Kalasasaya platform or marked the entrance to the sunken Akapana temple, its role was to demarcate a threshold. To pass through this archway during a ceremony was not a casual act, it was a profound spiritual transition. The architecture itself would have guided this experience. A priest or a chosen individual would have approached the gate, first passing the fearsome Chachapuma guardians, a ritual acknowledgement of the underworld powers that supported the cosmos. Then they would move through the arch, physically entering the space defined by the carved celestial court and the weeping creator god above. This physical movement was a metaphor for a spiritual journey, a symbolic ascent from the earthly realm of the K-Pacha into the divine presence of the Honan Pacha, or perhaps a descent into the ancestral wisdom of the Uku Pacha, depending on the ritual's purpose. This function as an interactive portal is powerfully reinforced by its potential role in celestial events. On the equinoxes, when the sun rose with perfect symmetry over the eastern wall of the Kalasasaya, its first rays would have struck the gate's central deity with dramatic precision. In that electrifying moment, the stone idol would have seemed to ignite with solar fire, the carved tears on its face perhaps glinting like streams of light. For the participants, this would not have been a coincidence. It was the culmination of a carefully orchestrated ritual. The gate became a machine for capturing a specific moment of cosmic alignment, a catalyst that amplified the spiritual potency of the event and opened the doorway between realms. The veil between the human and the divine was believed to be at its most permeable during these times of perfect balance, and the gate was the focal point that made this abstract concept a tangible, experienceable reality. The gate's iconography can then be understood not as a static picture, but as operating instructions for this portal. The central staff god is the gatekeeper, the entity who controls passage and whose compassion, in the form of rain, is the ultimate blessing sought from the other side. The 48 attendants are not just decorative, they are the array of spiritual forces that one might encounter while traversing this cosmic gateway: ancestral guides, celestial messengers, or deified stars. The repeating step motif framing the entire scene defines the architectural boundaries of this portal, marking it as a place where the three tiers of the cosmos connect. Even the unfinished section of carving adds to this concept, suggesting that the portal's power was so immense that it remained partially active and accessible even in its incomplete state, a conduit that was never fully closed. This interpretation synthesizes the astronomical, spiritual, and political theories into a single, breathtaking purpose. The gate was a calendar because knowing the exact moment the portal was most active was essential. It was a political tool because controlling access to this gateway, deciding who could pass through, and when concentrated ultimate spiritual authority in the hands of the elite. And it was a religious object because it provided the literal staging ground for the most important conversations a society could have. Dialogues with the gods who controlled the weather, the ancestors who provided wisdom, and the cosmic forces that ensured the continued existence of their world. The Gate of the Sun was the ultimate interface, a stone-built technology designed not for communication across space, but for connection across the very dimensions of existence. Despite the incredible depth of understanding we've gained, the gate of the sun steadfastly guards its most intimate secrets. For every theory that feels convincing, a dozen unanswered questions whisper from the stone, reminding us that we are still, in many ways, looking through a glass darkly. Take the objects held by the central deity. We call them staffs or scepters, but were they viewed as weapons, symbols of authority, or something else entirely? The condor heads suggest a celestial connection, but the repeating plant-like motifs carved along their length are deeply ambiguous. Could they represent specific crops like maize or quinoa that were the literal staff of life for the Tiwanaku? Or are they stylized rivers, channels for the gods' tear-born rain to flow into the earth? Without a written record, we are left interpreting these powerful symbols through our own modern lens, forever wondering if we're seeing agricultural tools, divine weapons, or something far more nuanced that we simply lack the cultural context to comprehend. Then there are the tears, those two haunting streams that make the gods so profoundly relatable. We've explored their potential as rain, sorrow, or comets, but could their meaning be even more specific? Some researchers have pondered a connection to vitrification or even natural mineral deposits. Andesite, when subjected to intense heat and rapid cooling, can form a glassy layer. Was this a natural geological process the Tiwanaku observed and incorporated into their mythology, seeing the stone itself as weeping a glassy substance? Or could the tears be a reference to a specific sacred liquid, like chicha fermented maize beer or water mixed with hallucinogenic compounds, used in rituals to commune with the divine? The tears are such a specific, intentional detail. They feel like they hold a key to the god's essential nature, a key we have yet to find. The number of attendants is another mathematical puzzle begging for a solution. Why 48? This number is too precise to be arbitrary. Does it hold the answer to a lost calendar system? We've looked at lunar cycles and Venusian periods, but what about the possibility of a multi-cyclic calendar that integrated the sun, moon, and stars into a grand, unifying temporal mechanism? The number 48 divides neatly into many astronomical cycles, but without a Rosetta Stone, a similar artifact with clear notation. We are ultimately making educated guesses. Each figure is also slightly unique. Do these variations in their headdresses or posture indicate different social roles, different deities, or mark specific points within a larger astronomical count? The uniformity of their motion suggests a single purpose, but their individual details hint at a complex hierarchy we can only begin to imagine. The pursuit of these answers is far from over. It's entering one of the most exciting phases in modern history. Archaeologists are no longer limited to trowels and brushes. Today, cutting-edge technology is providing a whole new set of eyes with which to see this ancient city. LiDAR, which uses laser pulses to map the ground surface through dense vegetation and soil, is being deployed over the surrounding area, revealing previously unknown structures, roadways, and agricultural systems hidden for centuries beneath the earth. This technology allows researchers to see the context of the gate in a way that was never before possible, to understand how it connected to the wider landscape of the Tiwanaku state. Ground-penetrating radar is being used to peek non-invasively beneath the plaza stones of the Kalasasaya, searching for hidden chambers, offering pits, or the foundations of structures that could tell us what exactly the gate was an entrance to. Furthermore, chemical analysis of soil samples from around the monument can reveal traces of organic materials, perhaps the remnants of offerings left centuries ago. Paleoclimatologists continue to refine their understanding of the Great Drought, providing a sharper picture of the environmental pressures that may have led to the gate's abandonment. Each new technological advance offers another thread to pull, another potential clue in this millennia-old mystery. The Gate of the Sun is no longer a silent ruin. It is an active archaeological site where the past is constantly conversing with the future, where every scan and soil sample brings us one step closer to hearing the whispers of the people who dared to carve their universe into a single magnificent stone. So where does this leave us, standing before this fractured stone portal, trying to piece together its meaning across a 1,000-year divide? We've journeyed through a constellation of theories, each one offering a different lens through which to view this ancient marvel. The central figure, whether we call him a staff god, a weeping deity of rain, or a deified ruler, emerges not as a singular entity but as a profound synthesis of Tiwanaku belief, a celestial farmer whose tears water the world, a master of time who measures the year in the rays of his own crown, and a political symbol whose authority literally supported the cosmos. The 48 winged attendants surrounding him are at once a celestial court of divine messengers, a procession of deified ancestors forever paying homage, and a sophisticated astronomical chart encoding the movements of stars and planets critical for survival. And the gate itself, it is a calendar, a cosmogram, a political manifesto, and most compellingly, a functional portal designed to bridge the gap between the human and the divine. This incredible multiplicity of meaning is not a sign of confusion, but rather the ultimate testament to the brilliance of the Tiwanaku mind. They did not compartmentalize their world into separate boxes of science, religion, and politics. For them, these concepts were woven into a single, intricate tapestry of understanding. A star was both a celestial body and a spiritual guide. A ruler was both a political leader and a divine intermediary. A stone gateway was both an architectural marvel and a living, breathing interface with the cosmos. The Gate of the Sun stands as the most complete expression of this holistic worldview, a permanent stone argument against seeing ancient cultures as simple or primitive. It challenges us to look deeper, to understand that the symbols left behind are often layered texts, waiting for us to learn how to read them. This is the true invitation of the Gate of the Sun, not to find a single, definitive answer, but to engage in the same act of questioning and wonder that has captivated everyone from Ephraim Square to modern archaeologists. It asks us to look at ancient art not as a passive relic, but as an active conversation. The next time you find yourself before an ancient monument in a museum, or even looking at a photograph of a distant ruin, try to see more than just the shape. Ask what world the creators were living in. What were their deepest fears, their greatest hopes? What forces of nature did they seek to appease or understand? The stones are rarely silent. They are just waiting for us to ask the right questions, and this conversation doesn't end here. What do you see when you look at the Gate of the Sun? Does the weeping god speak to you of compassion or of a profound celestial event? Do the running figures make you think of ancestors, stars, or something else entirely? The mystery is very much alive, and your perspective is a valuable part of it. Share your own theories and interpretations in the comments below. Let's continue unraveling this ancient puzzle together, because sometimes the most exciting discoveries aren't made in the dirt, but in the shared space of our collective